When my 6-year-old son pointed at me during family dinner, everyone froze. Mommy, why does Jessica use her nice voice to say mean things? I nearly dropped the wooden spoon I was using to stir Mac's dinner, the innocent question hitting me like a physical blow. My 6-year-old son sat at our small kitchen table, coloring dinosaurs with the intense focus only children possess, completely unaware that he'd just articulated what I'd been struggling to name for 8 months. Jessica. My ex-husband David's new wife, 28 years old with perfect highlights and a smile that could cut glass. The woman who'd been systematically dismantling my confidence one helpful comment at a time. What do you mean, sweetheart? I asked, though my stomach already knew exactly what he meant. Mac looked up, his dark eyes, so much like David's it sometimes hurt, serious beyond his years. Like today, when she said, "Oh Sarah, you look so tired lately, are you getting enough sleep? I have an amazing eye cream that might help with those dark circles." Her voice was nice, but it made you do the sad face. The sad face. That's what he called the expression I thought I'd been hiding so well. I turned off the burner and sat down across from him, my heart racing. Can you tell me more about the nice voice with mean things? Mac set down his green crayon and tilted his head, considering. Well, like last Sunday at Grandma Ruth's, Jessica said Mac is such a good eater now. I'm so glad David and I could help with his table manners. It must be hard managing everything on your own, Sarah. She was smiling really big, but then you got quiet and didn't eat your pie. I had to grip the edge of the table. Ruth's apple pie, my favorite since childhood, had tasted like cardboard that day. I'd excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection, wondering if I really was failing Mac, if David's mother was secretly agreeing with every word Jessica said. And remember when we went to my soccer game? Mac continued, warming to his topic. Jessica told Coach Miller Sarah works so hard to make ends meet on her teacher's salary. We're just grateful we can help with Mac's equipment costs. Coach Miller looked at you funny after that. My cheeks burned remembering that moment. The way Coach Miller's expression had shifted from friendly to pitying. How I'd wanted to explain that I could afford my son's soccer cleats and shin guards just fine, that my $47,000 salary wasn't glamorous but it was enough for us. Instead, I'd smiled and thanked Jessica for her thoughtfulness. Mac, I said carefully, what would you call those kinds of words? The ones that sound nice but feel mean? He scrunched up his nose, thinking. Mean words said nicely? That's exactly right, baby. That's exactly what they are. Something clicked in that moment, sitting in our cozy kitchen with its mismatched chairs and refrigerator covered in Mac's artwork. For months, I'd been questioning myself, wondering if I was being too sensitive, if divorce had made me paranoid. But my 6-year-old had seen right through Jessica's performance. Mommy? Mac picked up his crayon again, already moving on the way kids do. Are we still going to Grandma Ruth's for dinner tomorrow? Tomorrow. Saturday family dinner, a tradition David's mother insisted on maintaining for Mac's sake. Another evening of Jessica's perfectly timed cruelties delivered with that radiant smile. Yes, sweetheart. We're going. But this time I thought things might be different. That night, after Mac was asleep, I sat on my bed with a yellow legal pad and started writing down every mean word said nicely moment I could remember. The list grew longer than I expected. Asterisk August 15th, Mac's birthday party. Oh Sarah, you made the cake yourself. How sweet. Next time I could recommend this amazing bakery, their cakes photograph so much better for social media. Asterisk. Asterisk September 3rd, back to school night. Sarah's doing such a good job juggling everything alone. It's wonderful that Mac has our house as a stable backup when things get overwhelming. Asterisk. Asterisk October 12th, pumpkin patch. I hope you don't mind that I bought Mac those boots. I noticed his sneakers had holes, and David and I just couldn't stand seeing his little feet get wet. Asterisk. The boots. God, the boots. I'd been saving for weeks to buy Mac new shoes, had it budgeted for my next paycheck. But Jessica had swooped in with $60 rain boots, making me look negligent in front of the other parents. Mac had been so excited about them that I couldn't bear to explain why my stomach twisted every time he wore them. By 2 a.m., I had 17 incidents documented. 17 moments where Jessica had smiled her perfect smile and made me feel like a failing mother, an inadequate provider, a woman who couldn't measure up. All delivered in a tone so sweet that calling it out would make me look petty and vindictive. My phone buzzed. A text from David, asterisk just wanted to confirm tomorrow at Mom's. Jessica's making her famous lasagna. 6 p.m. sharp asterisk. Jessica's famous lasagna. Of course. Another opportunity for her to showcase her domestic perfection while I arrived with a store-bought salad and a lingering smell of dry erase markers on my clothes. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "We'll be there." The next morning, Mac bounced into my room at 7:15, clutching his stuffed triceratops. "Mommy, can we practice the mean words said nicely game before we go to Grandma's?" I sat up, instantly awake. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Well, you taught me about them yesterday, and I was thinking maybe I could help you. Like, if Jessica says mean words nicely, I could tell everyone what they really mean. I'm good at translating things." My heart started pounding. The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. "Mac, that's very thoughtful, but..." I could raise my hand like at school and say, "Excuse me, but Jessica just said something mean with nice words." Then I could explain what she really meant. His little face was so earnest, so determined to protect me. "Baby, that might make people upset. But lying makes me upset," he said simply. "And pretending mean words are nice is like lying, right?" I pulled him onto the bed, breathing in his sleepy child scent. He wasn't wrong. What Jessica did was a form of lying, a manipulation so subtle that everyone missed it except the target. But using my 6-year-old as a weapon felt wrong too, even if he was volunteering. "How about this?" I said carefully. "Today, we'll just observe. We'll notice the mean words said nicely together, but we won't do anything about them yet. Can you be my detective partner?" Mac's eyes lit up. "Like a secret mission?" Exactly like a secret mission. But even as I said it, I could feel something shifting inside me. For 8 months, I'd absorbed Jessica's poison in silence, telling myself I was taking the high road. But watching my son learn to decode cruelty disguised as kindness, seeing him develop armor against manipulation at age 6, maybe the high road wasn't as virtuous as I thought. Maybe sometimes, the truth needed a louder voice. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. I found myself rehearsing conversations, imagining Jessica's perfectly modulated voice delivering fresh wounds while the family nodded approvingly at her concern. Max spent 2 hours building an elaborate Lego fortress, periodically updating me on his defensive strategies. The knights need to be ready for sneak attacks, he announced, positioning tiny plastic figures. The sneaky enemies look friendly, but they're actually trying to take over the castle. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. At 4:30, my phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach immediately clenched. He only called when there was a problem. Hey Sarah, quick change of plans for tonight. His voice carried that familiar edge of impatience. Jessica's sister Lauren is in town unexpectedly, so she'll be joining us. Also, Mom invited the Hendersons from next door. Hope that's okay. Of course it wasn't okay. The Hendersons, wealthy retirees who'd known David since he was Max's age, who still asked me intrusive questions about why our marriage really ended. Lauren, Jessica's younger sister who worked in pharmaceutical sales and drove a BMW she bought with cash. That's fine, I heard myself say, the automatic people-pleasing response I'd perfected over years of trying to keep everyone happy. Great. Oh, and Jessica suggested maybe you could bring something more substantial than salad this time? She's cooking for 8 now, and you know how Mom gets when there's not enough food. The familiar heat of humiliation crept up my neck. Ruth had never once complained about running short on food, but now I was supposed to stretch my grocery budget because Jessica had invited extra people without asking me. I'll figure something out, I said. Perfect. See you at 6 sharp. Don't be late, you know how Mom is about punctuality. After he hung up, I stared at my phone, then at my checkbook. Grocery budget for the week, $43. Enough for our regular meals, but not enough for something substantial to feed 8 people. I could use the money I'd been saving for Mac's winter coat, but that would mean another month of him wearing last year's jacket that barely reached his wrists. Mommy? Mac appeared beside me, clutching his triceratops. You're making the worried face now. I forced a smile. Just thinking about what to bring to dinner, sweetheart. What about your spaghetti? The one with a secret ingredient? My grandmother's recipe, ground turkey instead of beef because it was cheaper, but with a blend of spices that made it taste like it came from an expensive Italian restaurant. I could make enough for 10 people for under $15. That's perfect, Mac. You're brilliant. 2 hours later, we stood on Ruth's front porch, me holding a ceramic dish that smelled like garlic and oregano, Mac clutching a drawing he'd made of our detective mission. The sound of laughter drifted through the door, Jessica's melodic giggle mixing with unfamiliar voices. Remember, I whispered to Mac, we're just observing tonight. He nodded solemnly. Secret mission activated. David opened the door, looking annoyingly handsome in his navy button-down. There they are. Come in, come in. Jessica's been telling everyone about her new promotion. Of course she had. As we entered the living room, I took in the scene, Jessica radiant in cream-colored cashmere, her sister Lauren equally polished, the Hendersons looking impressed by whatever story they just heard. Ruth bustled over to hug Mac, her face lighting up the way it always did when she saw her grandson. Sarah, dear, something smells wonderful, Ruth said, reaching for my dish. Oh, how thoughtful. Jessica's voice cut through the warm moment like a blade through silk. Sarah made her famous budget spaghetti. I was just telling Lauren how creative you've gotten with stretching ingredients since the divorce. It's really inspiring how you make do with so little. The room went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then Lauren smiled brightly. That's so smart. I should learn some money-saving tricks. I felt Mac's small hand slip into mine, his fingers squeezing twice, our secret code for I see it too. The evening was just beginning. The Hendersons' eyes flicked between Jessica and me, that familiar look of uncomfortable curiosity settling on their faces. I could practically see them filing away this tidbit about my budget spaghetti to share with their book club later. Well, it's my grandmother's recipe actually, I managed, hating how defensive I sounded. She fed 7 kids with it during the Depression. How resourceful. Jessica's smile never wavered. I love how you honor your family's simpler traditions. David's told me so many stories about your grandmother's creative approach to cooking. Creative approach. Code for poor people food. Mac's grip on my hand tightened. Nana spaghetti is the best. Mac piped up suddenly, his voice carrying across the room. Mommy makes it taste like the fancy restaurant we went to for her birthday. That's why it's got a secret ingredient. Oh sweetie, Lauren cooed, what's the secret ingredient? Before I could deflect, Mac announced proudly, love. And also the special spice blend that makes people think it costs lots of money when it really doesn't. An awkward silence stretched across the room. Even Ruth looked uncomfortable. David cleared his throat. Why don't we all sit down? Jessica's lasagna should be ready soon. As we moved toward the dining room, I caught Jessica whispering something to Lauren. They both glanced at me and smiled, that particular smile women share when they're bonding over someone else's misfortune. The dining room table was set with Ruth's good china, crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier. Jessica had clearly orchestrated everything, down to the cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. My ceramic dish looked painfully out of place among the elegant serving pieces. Sarah, why don't you sit there? Jessica gestured to the chair closest to the kitchen, since you'll probably want to help clear between courses. I know how you like to stay busy. The helpful hostess tone was flawless, but Mac's eyes shot to mine. He'd caught it too, the assumption that I was the help, not a guest. As we settled around the table, Mr. Henderson launched into a story about their recent cruise to Alaska. $1,700 per person, but worth every penny. You really should treat yourself to something like that, Jessica. You work so hard. Oh, we're actually thinking about Tuscany next spring, Jessica replied, cutting perfect squares of lasagna. David's always wanted to see the wine country, and honestly, after this promotion, we can finally afford to do it right. Stay in those beautiful villa hotels, eat at Michelin-starred restaurants. She served everyone else first, making a show of giving Mac an extra-large portion. Growing boys need proper nutrition, she said, ruffling his hair. Sarah does such a good job with what she has, but there's nothing like a home-cooked meal with quality ingredients. Speaking of nutrition, Lauren chimed in. Jess was telling me about that wonderful pediatrician you found, David. Dr. Morrison? The one at Children's Hospital? David nodded, cutting into his lasagna. Mac's been seeing him since we got custody sorted out. Insurance covers most of it, fortunately. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. What do you mean, custody sorted out? The table went silent. Jessica's face flickered with something that might have been panic before smoothing back into concern. Oh, sweetie, she said gently, I thought David had discussed this with you. We've been talking to a family attorney about formalizing Mac's schedule. You know, making sure he has consistent healthcare, educational planning. The lawyer suggested that with my promotion and David's bonus, we could provide more stability. The words hit me like ice water. You're trying to change our custody arrangement? Not change, David said quickly. Just optimize. For Mac's benefit. Mac looked between us, his small face confused and worried. What's custody? Nobody answered him. The Hendersons studied their plates. Ruth's mouth had fallen slightly open. We have 50-50 custody, I said, my voice barely steady. That was settled in the divorce. Of course, Jessica's voice dripped sympathy. And you've done amazingly well. But Mac's getting older, his needs are changing. Private school applications, orthodontics, college planning. We just want to make sure he has every opportunity. Mac's hand found mine under the table again, but this time his grip was tight with fear, not solidarity. The secret mission had just become a war. The room felt like it was spinning. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as Jessica's words settled over the dinner table like a toxic fog. Mac's small hand was trembling in mine, and I realized he understood more than any 6-year-old should have to. Jessica, Ruth's voice cut through the silence, sharp with confusion. What are you talking about? Sarah and David have shared custody. Mac is perfectly fine. Of course he's fine, Jessica said quickly, her smile never faltering. We just think he could be even better. Thriving, really. The attorney mentioned that courts often reconsider arrangements when there's a significant change in circumstances. What change in circumstances? I managed to ask, though my throat felt like sandpaper. Lauren leaned forward, seemingly eager to help her sister. Well, Jessica's promotion makes her regional sales director now. That's a 6-figure salary, plus David's architectural firm landed that huge contract with the city. And didn't you mention something about Sarah's school having budget cuts? My blood turned to ice. The budget cuts at Jefferson Elementary had been announced 3 weeks ago. 23 teachers were being laid off due to declining enrollment. I'd been on the potential list, not because of performance, but because I was one of the newer hires. I hadn't told anyone except my principal that I was worried about my job security. How did you know about the budget cuts? I asked. Jessica's eyes flickered. Oh, didn't David mention it? Mac told him during their Father-Son Day last weekend. Children pick up on so much stress at home. My stomach dropped. Mac had overheard my phone call with my union representative. I thought he'd been playing in his room, but he must have been listening from the hallway. Mommy? Mac's voice was small and scared. Are you going to lose your job? Before I could answer, Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. Sarah, I don't mean to pry, but if there's financial instability, surely you'd want what's best for Mac. These young folks seem very well established. There's no financial instability, I said firmly, though my voice cracked slightly. And even if there were, that doesn't change the fact that I'm his mother. Of course not. Jessica's tone was soothing, patronizing. No one's questioning your love for Mac. We're just thinking practically. My work schedule is much more flexible now. I could pick him up from school, help with homework, make sure he gets to all his activities on time. It would take so much pressure off you. The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. She was making it sound like she was doing me a favor, offering to relieve my burden rather than trying to steal my son. I don't need pressure taken off me, I said, my voice growing stronger. Mac and I are doing just fine. Are you though? Lauren asked with fake concern. Jessica mentioned you've seemed really stressed lately. Tired all the time, emotional. That has to affect Mac. I'm not, I started, then stopped. Every interaction I'd had with Jessica for the past 8 months suddenly made horrible sense. She hadn't just been undermining me for sport. She'd been building a case. Mac suddenly stood up on his chair, his young voice cutting through the adult tension. Excuse me, but Jessica is doing the thing again. Everyone stared at him. What thing, sweetheart? Ruth asked. The mean words said nicely thing. She's using her nice voice to say mean things about mommy. Mac's face was flushed but determined. Like when she said mommy looks tired, she really meant mommy looks bad. And when she said mommy's budget spaghetti, she really meant poor people food. And now she's using nice words to say she wants to take me away from mommy. The silence was deafening. Jessica's perfect composure finally cracked, her smile faltering as she stared at my 6-year-old son who had just exposed her entire game plan. Mac, honey, David started, but Mac wasn't finished. I made a list, he announced, pulling his crumpled drawing from his pocket. Of all the times Jessica said mean words nicely. Mommy taught me that pretending mean words are nice is like lying. And lying is wrong. He unfolded his paper, which I now realized wasn't just a drawing. In his careful first-grade handwriting, he documented everything. My heart stopped as Mac smoothed out his paper on the table. What I thought was just another dinosaur drawing was actually covered in his careful printing, with stick figures and dates scattered around the margins. This is from August 15, Mac announced, pointing to a drawing of 3 people around a birthday cake. Jessica said, "Oh Sarah, you made the cake yourself. How sweet." But she was really saying mommy's cake wasn't good enough for Instagram. Jessica's face had gone pale. Mac, sweetie, I think you misunderstood. And this one is from September 3rd, he continued, flipping to another section. Jessica said Sarah's doing such a good job juggling everything alone. But she meant mommy can't handle things and needs backup. Ruth was staring at Jessica with growing horror. The Hendersons looked like they wanted to disappear into their chairs. And October 12, Mac's voice grew more confident as he found his rhythm. Jessica bought me boots because she said my sneakers had holes. But Mommy was already saving money to buy me new shoes. Jessica just wanted everyone to think Mommy couldn't take care of my feet. David reached for the paper. Mac, that's enough. No. Mac pulled it protectively against his chest. I'm not done. There's more mean words said nicely. Like when Jessica told Coach Miller that Mommy works hard to make ends meet. She was really telling everyone that we're poor and need help. But we don't need help. Mommy makes the best dinners and reads me stories and helps with my homework, and she never makes me feel bad about anything. Tears were streaming down his small face now, but he kept going. And tonight Jessica said Mommy's spaghetti was budget food, but it's not. It's Nana's recipe and it tastes better than fancy restaurants. And then she said mean words nicely about taking me away from Mommy, but I don't want to be taken away. Mommy takes good care of me. The dining room was completely silent except for Max sniffling. Ruth's expression had shifted from confusion to fury as she stared at Jessica. Even the Hendersons looked uncomfortable now, probably realizing they'd been manipulated into this ambush. Mac, I said softly, reaching for him. He climbed down from his chair and wrapped his arms around my waist, still clutching his paper. Jessica finally found her voice. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Mac is just a child, he can't possibly understand the nuances of adult conversation. He understands perfectly, I said, my voice deadly quiet. He understands that you've been systematically humiliating me for 8 months while pretending to be helpful. He understands that you've been gathering ammunition for a custody fight. And he understands that you've been using him to spy on our private conversations. David shifted uncomfortably. Sarah, that's not. When exactly were you planning to serve me with papers? I interrupted. Before or after you finished documenting how inadequate I am as a mother? Ruth set down her fork with a sharp clink. David Michael Peterson, what in God's name is going on here? The use of his full name made David flinch like he was 12 years old again. Mom, it's complicated. No, it's not, Ruth snapped. Sarah is a wonderful mother. Mac is happy and healthy and loved. If you think I'm going to sit here and watch this woman, she gestured at Jessica, manipulate my grandson and torment the mother of my grandchild, you are sorely mistaken. Jessica's composure cracked further. Ruth, I'm only thinking of Mac's best interests. Surely you can see that we could provide more stability. Stability? Ruth's voice rose. You've turned my family dinners into psychological warfare. You think I haven't noticed how quiet Sarah gets whenever you open your mouth? You think I don't see how my grandson has been learning to decode your cruelty? Lauren tried to intervene. Mrs. Peterson, I think everyone's emotions are running high. You're damn right my emotions are running high. Ruth stood up, all 5 feet 2 inches of her quivering with rage. This is my house, my table, and my family. And I will not tolerate this manipulation 1 second longer. Mac looked up at me with his dark eyes. Did we solve the case, Mommy? Despite everything, I smiled down at my brave little boy. We absolutely did, Detective. The aftermath of Mac's revelation hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had finally been exposed. Jessica sat frozen, her perfect composure completely shattered, while David stared at his son with something that looked almost like pride mixed with horror. But I knew Jessica wouldn't go down without a fight. Ruth, she said, her voice taking on a trembling quality I'd never heard before, I understand you're upset, but I think we need to consider what's really happening here. She gestured toward Mac, who was still pressed against my side. Sarah has clearly coached a 6-year-old to spy on adult conversations and weaponize innocent comments. What kind of mother puts that burden on a child? The accusation hit like a physical blow. Around the table, I could see the Hendersons exchanging uncertain glances. Even Ruth's expression flickered with doubt. I didn't coach him, I said, but my voice sounded defensive even to my own ears. Mac came to me asking why. She's doing it again. Mac's voice cut through my explanation. She's using nice words to say Mommy is bad. She said what kind of mother, but she really meant Mommy is a bad mother. David leaned forward, his lawyer instincts kicking in. Mac, buddy, adults need to have complicated conversations sometimes. Maybe you should go play in Grandma's living room while we figure this out. No, Mac said firmly, clutching his paper tighter. Jessica wants to take me away from Mommy, and I have evidence. That's what detectives do, they collect evidence and tell the truth. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps the boy should. The boy has a name, I snapped, my protective instincts overriding everything else. And he has every right to defend himself against people who want to uproot his life. Lauren jumped back into the fray. Sarah, surely you can see how this looks. Teaching a child to keep lists of perceived slights? That's not healthy behavior. What's not healthy, Ruth said icily, is adults who smile while they deliver cruelty. Mac didn't misunderstand anything. I've watched Jessica operate for months, and I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, perfectly timed, I noticed. I've done nothing but try to help this family. I love Mac like he's my own son. Sarah, you have to know that everything I've said has come from a place of genuine concern. The performance was masterful. Even I felt a flicker of doubt until Mac spoke again. You don't love me like Mommy does, he said quietly. Mommy never makes me feel bad about our apartment or our car or my old shoes. You make me feel like Mommy isn't good enough, and that makes me feel like I'm not good enough either. The simple honesty of it devastated me. My 6-year-old had been carrying this weight for months, watching someone systematically tear down his mother while he tried to decode why it made him feel so bad. David's face went white. Mac, we never meant. You didn't listen, Mac interrupted, his voice getting stronger. When I told you about the mean words said nicely, you said Jessica was just being helpful. But she wasn't. She was being sneaky mean. Jessica tried one last gambit. David, this is exactly what I've been worried about. Sarah is raising Mac to be suspicious and defensive. He's learning to see malice where there's only kindness. What happens when he takes this attitude to school? To future relationships? It was a brilliant manipulation, turning Mac's perceptiveness into a psychological disorder, making his ability to see through her facade sound like damage I had inflicted. But Ruth had heard enough. Get out, she said quietly. Everyone froze. What? Jessica asked. I said get out of my house. Both of you. Ruth's voice was steel. David, I raised you better than this. And Jessica, your performance tonight has shown me exactly who you are. The battle lines had been drawn, and my son had just declared war on behalf of both of us. David shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the hardwood. Mom, you can't be serious. This is my wife we're talking about. And Mac is my grandson, Ruth fired back, not backing down an inch. I won't have him manipulated in my own home. Jessica's tears were flowing freely now, but something in her eyes had turned calculating. Fine. We'll go. But David, I hope you realize what just happened here. Sarah has spent months poisoning your son against me, and now she's turned your own mother against us too. She stood gracefully, dabbing at her eyes with her cloth napkin. Mac, sweetheart, I want you to know that everything I've ever said or done has been because I care about you. Someday, when you're older, you'll understand that adults sometimes have to make difficult decisions for the people they love. Mac pressed closer to me. I already understand. You want to take me away from Mommy because you think you're better than us. The words hung in the air like a slap. Jessica's mask finally slipped completely, and for just a second, I saw pure rage flash across her features. David, she said tightly, we're leaving. Now. But David was staring at Mac with an expression I couldn't read. Buddy, is that really what you think? That Jessica and I think we're better than you and Mommy? Mac nodded solemnly. You live in the big house with a fancy kitchen and the 3-car garage. Jessica drives the white car that costs more than Mommy makes in a whole year, she told Mrs. Henderson that at the school carnival. And you guys always talk about money stuff when you think I'm not listening. What money stuff? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Mac looked up at me with those serious dark eyes. Like when Jessica said the lawyer costs $300 an hour, but it would be worth it to get primary custody. And when Daddy said your teacher's salary was barely above poverty level and the judge would see that. The room went dead silent. Even Lauren looked horrified. David's face had gone ashen. Mac, you weren't supposed to hear. But I did hear. Mac's voice cracked. I hear lots of things. Like when Jessica called Mommy that woman when she thought I was in the bathroom. And when you said I needed proper role models instead of just Mommy. Ruth sank back into her chair like Mac had physically struck her. David, tell me you haven't been planning this behind Sarah's back. It's not. It's complicated, Mom. It's really not, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. You've been building a custody case for months. The comments about my finances, the observations about my parenting, Jessica's sudden interest in Mac's every need, it was all evidence gathering. Jessica straightened, apparently deciding that since their plan was exposed, she might as well own it. Sarah, any family court judge will see that we can provide Mac with opportunities you simply cannot. Private school, tutoring, travel, cultural experiences. A mother who doesn't use him as a spy, Ruth interjected coldly. We never asked Mac to spy, David protested. You didn't have to, Mac said quietly. Jessica always asked me questions about home when you weren't there. Like what we had for dinner, and if Mommy seemed sad, and if our apartment was cold because she was worried about the heating bill. The methodical nature of it took my breath away. Jessica hadn't just been cruel, she'd been strategic, using my own son to build a case against me. Well, Jessica said, her voice returning to its practiced sweetness, I suppose we all know where we stand now. David, we should go. We have that appointment with the attorney Monday morning anyway. The appointment was in 3 days. Whatever legal action they'd been planning was already in motion. Mac looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Mommy, can they really take me away? And suddenly, I realized that everything that had happened tonight was just the opening move. The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Mac's tear-filled eyes searched my face for reassurance I wasn't sure I could give. Around the table, everyone seemed frozen, except Jessica, who was watching my face with something that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. No, sweetheart, I said firmly, pulling Mac closer. They can't just take you away. We have a custody agreement, and... Actually, David interrupted, his voice taking on that clinical tone he used when he was about to deliver bad news. Our lawyer explained that custody arrangements can be modified when there's been a substantial change in circumstances. Ruth slammed her hand on the table. What substantial change? Mac is thriving. Jessica dabbed at her eyes again, but her voice was steady now, businesslike. Ruth, I know this is hard to hear, but we've documented several concerning patterns over the past 8 months. Sarah's financial stress, her emotional instability, Mac's increasing anxiety about his home situation. I don't have anxiety. Mac protested. I'm happy with Mommy. Of course you are, sweetheart. Jessica's tone was patronizing now, the mask completely gone. But children often don't recognize when they're in unhealthy situations. That's why adults have to make these decisions. The Hendersons were practically squirming in their chairs. Mrs. Henderson finally spoke up. Perhaps we should leave. This seems like a family matter. Actually, you're perfect witnesses, Jessica said quickly. You've seen Sarah's behavior tonight, coaching a 6-year-old to make accusations, turning him into a weapon against his father's new family. Any judge would be concerned about that level of manipulation. My blood turned to ice. She was right, to an outsider, it might look like I had coached Mac. The fact that he'd written everything down, the way he'd stood up to defend me so articulately, it could easily be spun as evidence of parental manipulation rather than a child's natural protectiveness. I have pictures, Mac said suddenly, his small voice cutting through my panic. What pictures, buddy? David asked, his lawyer instincts clearly alert to a potential problem. Mac reached into his pocket and pulled out my old iPhone, the one I'd given him to use for games when we were waiting places. I started taking pictures of Mommy's face after Jessica said mean words nicely. To show you how sad she got. My heart stopped. I'd had no idea he was documenting my reactions. Mac, honey, let me see. Jessica reached for the phone, but Mac clutched it protectively. No. These are my pictures. He looked up at me. Mommy, can I show everyone? So they can see what Jessica's words really do? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mac scrolled through the phone with the practiced ease of his generation, then held it up to show a photo that made my stomach clench. It was me at his soccer game in September, taken from his height level so you could only see from my chest down. I was gripping the metal bleachers so hard my knuckles were white, my shoulders hunched forward like I was trying to disappear. This is after Jessica told Coach Miller about Mommy's teacher salary and how we needed help with my equipment, Mac explained matter-of-factly. See how Mommy's hands are squeezy? She does that when she's trying not to cry. He swiped to the next photo. This one showed my reflection in Ruth's hallway mirror from last month's dinner, my face pale, eyes hollow, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes while Jessica's laughter echoed from the dining room. And this is after Jessica said my Halloween costume looked so creative and homemade in that voice that really meant cheap, Mac continued his narration. Mommy thought no one was looking, but I was. There were dozens of them. Photo after photo of my hands gripping steering wheels, my shoulders sagging, my fake smiles cracking at the edges. An 8-month documentation of psychological warfare, captured through a 6-year-old's eyes. David was staring at the phone like it might explode. Mac, why did you take all these pictures? Because I wanted to show you how Jessica's words made Mommy look broken, Mac said simply. I thought if you could see it, you'd tell Jessica to stop. But every time I tried to tell you, you said I was imagining things. The silence stretched endlessly. Finally, Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. I think we really should go, Martha. As the Hendersons gathered their things and made their awkward exits, Jessica's composure finally shattered completely. This is insane, she hissed. We're being manipulated by a 6-year-old with a camera phone. But Ruth was studying the photos with growing fury, and even David looked shaken as Matt continued scrolling through months of documented misery. The real evidence, I realized, had been there all along. I just never knew my son was collecting it. After the Hendersons fled and the silence stretched unbearably long, David finally spoke. Mac, can I see the phone for a minute? My son hesitated, looking between his father and me. Will you give it back? Of course, buddy. But as David scrolled through the photos, his expression grew increasingly disturbed. I watched him stop on one particular image, me in Ruth's powder room from 3 weeks ago, gripping the sink edge, mouth open in what was clearly a silent sob. When was this taken? He asked quietly. After Jessica asked if I was managing okay financially in front of your law school friends, Mac answered. She said it right after you told everyone about your big promotion. Mommy went to wash her hands and didn't come back for a really long time. I remembered that night. David's former classmates congratulating him on making junior partner while Jessica steered the conversation to their upcoming Tuscany trip. When someone asked about my work, Jessica had jumped in with that perfectly timed concern about whether teaching was sustainable long-term for a single mother. David kept scrolling, his face getting paler. This one's from Mac's birthday party. That's when Jessica said Mommy's homemade cake was so sweet but then whispered to Aunt Lauren that next time they should just order from the bakery so it would photograph better, Mac explained. Mommy heard it. She made the pretend smile but her eyes went all wet. Jesus Christ, David breathed. Don't take the Lord's name in vain, Ruth snapped automatically, but her attention was fixed on Jessica, who had gone completely rigid in her chair. David, you cannot seriously be buying into this manipulation, Jessica said, but her voice had lost its honeyed quality. A child with a camera does not constitute evidence of anything except Sarah teaching him to be paranoid and vindictive. Paranoid? Ruth's voice was dangerously quiet. He documented 8 months of you systematically tearing down his mother. How is that paranoid? Because children misinterpret adult conversations. Sarah has clearly coached him too. I didn't coach him to do anything. The words exploded out of me. I had no idea he was taking pictures. I had no idea he was keeping lists. All I did was give him a name for what you were doing to me because he asked why your nice words made me sad. Mac tugged on my sleeve. Show them the other thing, Mommy. What other thing? He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder, the one I'd bought him last Christmas so he could interview his stuffed animals. My heart sank as I realized what was coming. I started recording Jessica when she used her mean nice voice, he announced proudly. Like when Daddy wasn't in the room. David's face went white. Mac, you can't record people without. I can record mean people, Mac said stubbornly. Especially when they think kids aren't listening. He pressed play. Jessica's voice filled the dining room, crystal clear. Mac, sweetie, does Mommy seem worried about money lately? I just want to make sure you're not going without anything important. You know you can always tell Daddy and me if there's anything you need at home that Mommy can't provide. The recording continued with Mac's small voice. We have everything we need. Mommy takes good care of me. Of course she does, baby. But sometimes grown-ups have to pretend everything is okay even when it's not. Like if the electricity bill is hard to pay, or if there's not enough food in the refrigerator. Those would be important things for Daddy to know about. My hands were shaking. She'd been interrogating my 6-year-old, fishing for evidence of financial neglect that didn't exist. David stared at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Jessica, what the hell is this? The war had officially begun. The recording kept playing, and with each word, Jessica's carefully constructed image crumbled further. Her voice continued, sickeningly sweet, and Mac, honey, when Mommy gets upset or cries, what does she say? Does she ever say things about Daddy or me that make you feel confused? Mommy doesn't cry, Mac's recorded voice replied loyally. She only gets the sad face when you use your mean nice words. There was a pause, then Jessica's voice again, sharper now. What do you mean, mean nice words? When you say nice things that aren't really nice. Like when you told Mrs. Patterson that Mommy worked so hard to make ends meet but your voice meant we're poor and need help. The silence in Ruth's dining room was deafening. David's hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Even Lauren looked horrified. Turn it off, Jessica whispered. But Mac pressed play on another file. This time, it was Jessica's voice from what sounded like the kitchen, probably thinking Mac was out of earshot. Lauren, I swear to God, if we don't get primary custody soon, I'm going to lose my mind. Watching David pay that woman child support every month while she parades around in her discount store clothes, playing the martyred single mother. It's nauseating. Lauren's voice responded, the lawyer said you need more evidence of instability, right? What about that teaching job situation? Perfect timing, actually. 23 teachers getting laid off, and Sarah's definitely on the list. David's already drafting the motion to modify custody based on substantial change in financial circumstances. Judge Martinez approved the Henderson case with far less evidence than we have. The blood drained from my face. Judge Martinez. I'd heard that name before. David's firm had done legal work for his brother's construction company. This wasn't just planned, it was orchestrated with inside knowledge of the system. David slowly set the recorder down, his face ashen. Jessica, please tell me this isn't what it sounds like. It sounds like your wife has been using our son as a spy for months while planning to destroy me in court, I said, my voice barely controlled. Jessica finally snapped. Our son? He's not our son, Sarah. He's David's son, and he deserves better than a struggling teacher who can't provide him with proper opportunities. Proper opportunities? Ruth's voice cut like glass. You mean like learning to manipulate and lie? Like discovering that adults will smile while they destroy each other? Mac had been unusually quiet during the last recording, but now he spoke up, his small voice cutting through the adult fury. Jessica, why did you tell Aunt Lauren that Daddy pays Mommy child support? Daddy told me that child support money is for taking care of me, not for Mommy. So really, Daddy pays money to take care of me when I'm at Mommy's house. That's not the same thing. Even at 6, he understood the distinction that Jessica had deliberately twisted. The child support wasn't about me, it was about him. But Jessica had framed it as David supporting his ex-wife, making it sound like charity rather than parental responsibility. David buried his face in his hands. Oh, God. Mac, I'm so sorry. Why are you sorry, Daddy? Because. David's voice broke slightly. Because Jessica and I forgot the most important thing. We forgot to ask what you wanted. Mac looked confused. What I wanted about what? About where you want to live. About whether you're happy with how things are now. My heart stopped. In all the legal maneuvering and emotional warfare, no one had asked the most basic question, was Mac actually unhappy with our current arrangement? I like living with Mommy and visiting you, Mac said simply. I don't want that to change. I just want Jessica to stop being mean nice to Mommy. The simple honesty of it hit like a physical blow. All of Jessica's elaborate plans, all the documented evidence of my inadequacy, and Mac just wanted the cruelty to stop. But Jessica wasn't finished fighting yet. Jessica's face twisted into something I'd never seen before, raw, ugly fury stripped of all pretense. You want to know what Mac wants? He's 6 years old. He wants candy for breakfast and to stay up until midnight watching cartoons. Children don't get to make decisions about custody because they don't understand what's best for them long term. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. David, we are not going to let a recording made by a child derail 2 years of planning. Judge Martinez already indicated he'd be receptive to our petition. We have documented financial instability, emotional manipulation of a minor, and now clear evidence that Sarah has been coaching Mac to spy on us. I wasn't spying. Mac protested, but Jessica ignored him completely. The attorney fees alone have cost us $12,000 so far, she continued, her voice rising. I've restructured my entire career around being available for Mac. I've documented every missed school pickup, every time he's come to our house in clothes that don't fit properly, every indication that Sarah can't provide the stability he needs. Ruth stood up slowly, her small frame vibrating with rage. What missed pickups? Sarah has never missed a pickup. October 4th, Jessica said immediately. She was 23 minutes late to Jefferson Elementary. Mac was the last child waiting. I was in a faculty meeting that ran over. I protested. I called the school office to let them know. October 27th, 18 minutes late. November 9th, 31 minutes late because her car wouldn't start. November 15th. You've been timing my pickups? The violation of it hit me like ice water. How could you possibly know? I drive past Jefferson every day on my way home from the office, Jessica said coldly. It's public property. There's nothing illegal about observing a pattern of tardiness and irresponsibility. Mac's grip on my hand tightened. Mommy, what's irresponsibility? Before I could answer, David exploded. Jesus Christ, Jessica. You've been stalking them? It's not stalking, it's documentation. Our lawyer specifically said we needed concrete examples of. Jessica stopped abruptly, realizing she'd revealed too much. Examples of what? Ruth demanded. The silence stretched until Lauren, apparently trying to help her sister, jumped in. Examples of how Mac's current situation isn't meeting his full potential. Look at the facts objectively. Sarah makes $47,000 a year as a teacher, probably less after the budget cuts. David and Jessica's combined income is over $200,000. Mac could attend St. Catherine's Prep instead of public school, have private tutoring, travel opportunities. I went to public school, David said quietly. So did you, Jessica. We turned out fine. That was different, Jessica snapped. We had 2-parent households. Mac needs consistency, structure, role models who can show him what success looks like. The insult was so blatant that even the Hendersons, who'd been trying to inch toward the door, stopped and stared. Mac suddenly let go of my hand and walked over to his father. Daddy, what does success look like? David's throat worked silently for a moment. What do you mean, buddy? Well, Jessica says you and her are successful, but you both seem really angry all the time. And you make Mommy sad. But Mommy and I laugh together every day, and she helps me with my homework, and she reads me stories with funny voices. Mac's forehead wrinkled in concentration. If success means being mean to people, I don't want to be successful. The words hung in the air like a final judgment. Jessica's carefully constructed case had just been demolished by the very child she claimed to be protecting. But the look in her eyes told me she was far from finished. Jessica's face went through a series of expressions, shock, rage, calculation, before settling into something cold and determined. You know what? Fine. We'll do this the hard way. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through what looked like a notes app. David, since we're apparently airing everything tonight, let's talk about the real documentation I have. My stomach dropped as she began reading from her screen. September 12th, Mac arrived at our house with a bruise on his upper arm. When asked about it, he said he fell off his bike but couldn't explain how a bike accident would cause bruising in that specific location. He did fall off his bike. I protested. He hit the handlebars when. September 26th, Mac mentioned that Mommy had been talking to herself in the kitchen late at night. When pressed, he described Sarah having animated conversations with no one else present. Ruth's face went white. Jessica, what are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. October 3rd, Mac came to our house with a significant cut on his knee that appeared to have been treated with inappropriate first aid, a Hello Kitty band-aid over what should have required proper medical attention. It was a scrape from the playground. My voice was getting shrill. The school nurse cleaned it and said it was fine. But Jessica kept reading. October 15th, Mac reported that Mommy had been crying while looking at papers late at night, and that she told him they might have to make some changes but not to worry about it. David looked at me with growing concern. Sarah, what papers? I felt trapped. The papers had been my termination notice, preliminary, pending final budget approvals, but still devastating. I'd been trying to figure out how to tell Mac we might need to move to a smaller apartment, how to explain that Mommy's job might go away without scaring him. Budget documents from school, I said weakly. November 2nd, Jessica continued relentlessly. Mac mentioned that sometimes he has to be extra quiet in the mornings because Mommy has headaches that make her not want to talk. Mac looked confused. But Mommy, you said. November 18th, Mac reported that their apartment was really cold one night and they slept together in Mommy's bed with lots of blankets. The furnace repair was delayed by 2 days. I was desperate now. I kept him warm and safe until December 1st, Mac arrived at our house asking if we had any extra food because there wasn't much in Mommy's refrigerator. That one hit like a physical blow because it was partially true. I'd been stretching groceries until payday, and Mac had noticed we were down to cereal and peanut butter sandwiches for 2 days. Jessica, Ruth said slowly, are you seriously trying to make normal parenting challenges sound like abuse? I'm documenting a pattern of instability that's affecting Mac's well-being, Jessica replied coldly. A pattern that includes financial stress, possible mental health issues, and situations where Mac's basic needs aren't being consistently met. Mac suddenly stepped forward, his small face serious. Jessica, you're doing the mean words thing again, but worse this time. Mac, sweetheart, the adults are talking. No. His voice was stronger than I'd ever heard it. You're taking my words and making them sound scary, but they're not scary. Mommy doesn't hurt me. She takes care of me when I'm sick, and when the heat wasn't working, she made it fun like we were camping. And when there wasn't lots of food, she made pancakes for dinner and said it was breakfast for dinner day. David was staring at Jessica with growing horror. You've been interrogating him. Twisting his innocent comments into evidence of neglect. I've been protecting him, Jessica shot back. Someone has to ask the hard questions about whether Mac's needs are really being met. But Mac wasn't finished. He walked over to Jessica, looked up at her with those serious dark eyes, and said in his clear 6-year-old voice, I don't want to live with people who think taking care of me means being mean to my mommy. That's not taking care of me at all. The silence that followed was deafening. And I realized that my little boy had just won a war I'd been afraid I was losing. The silence stretched until David slowly stood up, his face a mask I'd never seen before, not the charming lawyer, not the frustrated ex-husband, but something raw and ashamed. Jessica, he said quietly, I need you to leave. Now. David, you cannot be serious. I am completely serious. His voice was deadly calm. I need you to go to your sister's house tonight. We'll talk tomorrow after I've had time to process what just happened here. Jessica's composure finally cracked completely. You're choosing them over me? Over us? After everything we planned, everything I've sacrificed. You've been psychologically torturing my son's mother for 8 months, David said, each word precise and cutting. You've been using my child as an unwitting spy. You've documented normal parenting moments and twisted them into evidence of abuse. That's not sacrifice, Jessica. That's manipulation. It's strategy, she screamed, her perfect mask completely gone now. Do you want Mac growing up in poverty? Do you want him to struggle the way Sarah does, counting every penny, wearing second-hand clothes, living in that cramped apartment? Stop. Mac's small voice cut through her tirade. Just stop talking about my mommy like that. But Jessica was beyond reason now. Mac, you're too young to understand, but someday you'll realize that I was trying to give you opportunities your mother simply cannot provide. Piano lessons, travel, college prep courses. I don't want piano lessons if they come from someone who's mean to my mommy, Mac said simply. And mommy's already saving money for my college. She showed me the jar in her closet with $43.17 so far. My heart clenched. He'd found my pathetic college savings, less than $50 scraped together from spare change and skipped lunches. Jessica laughed bitterly. $43? Sarah, that's not college savings, that's grocery money. Mac's tuition at St. Catherine's Prep alone would be $18,000 a year. His college fund should have at least $20,000 by now if you were planning properly. The numbers hit like physical blows. $18,000 a year, almost half my salary. $20,000 in savings, more than I'd ever had in my account at one time. Jessica, Ruth's voice was ice, get out of my house. Right now. Fine, Jessica spat, grabbing her designer purse. But David, when you come to your senses, remember that Judge Martinez expects our petition first thing Monday morning. With or without your support, Mac deserves better than this. She stormed toward the front door, Lauren scrambling to follow her. But she stopped in the doorway, turning back with one final arrow to loose. Mac, honey, I want you to remember something. You're daddy and I will always be here for you when you need us. When the apartment gets too cold again, when there's no food in the refrigerator, when mommy can't afford the things other kids have, you call us, okay? Day or night. The cruelty of it took my breath away. She was planting seeds of doubt in his mind, making him question whether our life together was enough. But Mac walked over to me and took my hand. Mommy's apartment is perfect size for us. And we always have food, sometimes it's just different food, like pancakes for dinner. And I don't need things other kids have because I have you. After Jessica and Lauren left, the house felt like a bomb had gone off. Ruth sank into her chair, looking older than her 72 years. David stood frozen by the window, watching Jessica's BMW disappear down the street. Daddy? Mac's voice was small. Are you still going to try to take me away from Mommy? David turned around, and I saw tears in his eyes for the first time since our divorce. No, buddy. I'm going to try to figure out how to fix what I almost broke. 6 months later, I stood in the same kitchen where this all began, stirring Mac's favorite pasta while he sat at our table working on a science project about detective work. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mommy, can I interview you for my report? Mac asked, holding up the same little recorder that had helped save us. Mrs. Patterson said I should talk to someone who solved a real mystery. I smiled, remembering how terrified I'd been that night at Ruth's. How certain I was that Jessica's perfect manipulation would destroy everything Mac and I had built together. What kind of questions, detective? Well, like how did you know Jessica was being sneaky mean? And why didn't the grown-up see it at first? I turned off the burner and sat across from him, just like that first night when he'd asked about nice words that mean things. But now his eyes held confidence instead of confusion. The truth is, buddy, you were the real detective. You saw things I was too scared to name. But you taught me about mean words said nicely. That was the most important clue. He was right. Teaching him that vocabulary, giving him language to identify manipulation, had been the key to everything. Jessica's entire strategy had depended on her victims staying silent, doubting themselves, accepting her version of reality. Mac, can I tell you something important? After that dinner at Grandma Ruth's, Daddy called off the custody case completely. He fired the lawyer and told Judge Martinez he'd made a terrible mistake. Mac looked up from his project with interest. What about the mean lady Jessica? Well, Daddy realized that someone who would manipulate a little boy wasn't someone he wanted to be married to. They're getting divorced now. It had been swift and brutal. David had moved out of their house within a week, staying at Ruth's while he figured out his next steps. Jessica had tried to salvage things, but the recordings Mac made had shattered David's trust completely. Is Daddy sad? Mac asked with 6-year-old concern. A little. But he's mostly sorry that he let Jessica convince him I wasn't taking good enough care of you. That had been the hardest conversation, David's tearful apology, his admission that Jessica had slowly poisoned him against me with her constant implications that I was struggling, failing, inadequate. He genuinely believed he was rescuing Mac from poverty and instability. Mommy, did you get scared when Jessica tried to take me away? I reached across and squeezed his hand. Terrified. But you know what? Even if she had won, even if a judge had said you needed to live with them, it wouldn't have changed the most important thing. What's that? That you're my son, and I'm your mommy, and nobody can ever change that. Not lawyers or judges or mean people who smile while they hurt others. Mac nodded solemnly, then brightened. And now I know how to spot the mean words said nicely people, so they can't trick us anymore. That's right, detective. My phone buzzed with a text from David, asterisk picking Mac up at 6 for dinner. Jessica's attorney finalized everything today, she gets nothing related to Mac. Ever asterisk. I showed Mac the message. Daddy wants to take you to that new pizza place tonight. The one with the arcade? Cool. He paused. Mommy, is Daddy learning to spot mean words said nicely people too? I laughed, thinking of how dramatically David's picker had improved since Jessica. Yeah, buddy. I think we all learned some important lessons about trusting our instincts. As I watched my son carefully writing notes for his detective report, I realized Jessica had been right about one thing: Mac had learned invaluable lessons from our experience. He'd learned to name manipulation. To trust his observations. To speak truth even when adults wanted him to stay quiet. Those were skills worth more than any private school tuition.